And yet, as the hours unfold and headlines swirl, one realization becomes undeniable. This is no longer just about Jungkook or even about K-pop. This is about how power shifts in real time, how history bends when enough people care, and how the cultural borders that once divided East and West have finally started to dissolve, not by politics or treaties, but by sound waves, headphones, and the voice of a 27-year-old artist from Busan. Across TikTok and Twitter, fans are not just celebrating, they're analyzing. They're tracking real-time Spotify trends, organizing celebratory playlists in multiple time zones, decoding every lyric from "Standing Next to You," reposting American influencers praising the production quality, and even mocking traditional industry gatekeepers who previously scoffed at idol music. The conversation has mutated beyond music. It's now sociology, economics, fandom psychology. Jungkook has turned the global streaming ecosystem into a living laboratory where Western assumptions get stress-tested every hour. In New York's Times Square, digital billboards flash clips from his music videos. Meanwhile, in Seoul, entire buildings light up to honor today's chart-topping announcement. American morning shows, notoriously slow to pick up non-English hits, are now scrambling to secure interview rights with Korean cultural experts. Every analytics firm from Nielsen to Chartmetric is recalibrating their 2025 forecasts, because if this can happen once, it can happen again. And that possibility terrifies and excites the industry in equal measure. From a distance, this seems like a pop miracle. But zoom in closer, and it becomes clear this was calculated, planned, and fiercely executed. Jungkook didn't just walk into American music history. He dismantled the rules, rewrote them in 2 languages, and smiled softly while doing it. What we're witnessing now is not a trend, but a tipping point. If BTS cracked the door open, Jungkook has kicked it off the hinges, and behind him is a flood of new artists from across Asia, Latin America, and Africa ready to fill the void once monopolized by the American music machine. And yes, skeptics will argue, as they always do, that trends are temporary, that today's champion might be tomorrow's forgotten name. But those skeptics underestimate the tectonic shift of a fandom that doesn't simply consume music. They live it, study it, weaponize it. The ARMY isn't just a fan base. It's a global information network, a volunteer marketing firm, and a research department rolled into one. Multilingual, platform-savvy, emotionally invested, and endlessly mobilized at record stores and digital forums. In recording studios from LA to London, producers are taking notes. Labels are reevaluating their pipelines. You can almost hear the phone calls. Who's our Jungkook? Can we find one? Can we manufacture one? But what they don't understand is this. Jungkook wasn't manufactured. He was molded, yes, trained, yes, guided, but not built by machines. His appeal comes from contradiction. Polished yet vulnerable, global yet local, shy yet stage commanding. The very things they want to copy are the things that cannot be cloned. That's the paradox. That's why he wins as night falls in Seoul and rises in New York. The data pours in. Spotify confirms a 4th day of dominance. Billboard leaks early Hot 100 predictions, with projections placing Jungkook once again near the top. Even Apple Music, which previously lagged in Asian representation, lists Golden on its front page under Essential Pop Today, alongside Taylor Swift and The Weeknd. The image of Jungkook in a loose silk shirt, eyes closed mid-performance, now sits beside artists who once dominated the charts he now challenges, and still, Jungkook remains quiet. No Instagram lives, no press statements, no self-congratulations. He is somewhere in uniform, hair cropped, phone inaccessible, unaware in real time of the chaos his voice has stirred. This detachment only heightens the mystery. How many artists have ever made history while completely offline? How many have created a legacy while locked away from their own fame? Meanwhile, the Western press attempts to make sense of it all. Rolling Stone calls it the New World Order of Pop. Variety dubs him a silent superstar in an age of noise. The New York Times releases a Sunday feature titled "When the Future of American Music Was Korean," juxtaposing photos of Elvis Presley with Jungkook. exploring the evolution of masculine pop energy from then to now. Think pieces multiply. Cultural critics reach for metaphors: a meteor, a virus of excellence, a prism bending Western light. The reactions range from reverence to resentment. Some praise him as the artist who made American music interesting again. Others dismiss it as an anomaly, a fluke, a one-off, though the numbers tell a different story. And some just stare, open-mouthed, because what can you really say when you watch history unfold and realize you're not just witnessing it, but being reprogrammed by it? And somewhere, maybe in a bunk bed on a military base, Jungkook sleeps, unaware that in the silence of his absence, the noise of his art has reached a fever pitch. It's poetic in a way that pop rarely is. When every artist today chases virality by talking louder, showing more, doing stunts, Jungkook's greatest stunt was doing nothing, letting the music speak. And it shouted, "The final truth is this. Nothing about this is temporary." When a moment crosses culture, language, and politics, when it infiltrates playlists, textbooks, and hearts, it becomes more than a trend. It becomes canon. It becomes lore. And today, in the annals of American music, a new chapter has been added. It doesn't begin in Detroit or Nashville or Los Angeles. IT begins in Busan. And it ends nowhere did I end Los Angeles. A&R meetings no longer begin with questions about radio edits or TikTok influencers. They begin with a name. What would Jungkook do? Industry veterans who once dismissed K-pop as a fad are now flying consultants from Seoul into boardrooms, desperate to understand the formula behind his success. They watch his music videos frame by frame. They dissect the choreography, the cinematography, the pacing of his release calendar, the emotional architecture of his lyrics. They want to package it, sell it, replicate it. But even as they try, they begin to see this wasn't built overnight, and it cannot be built again. Because Jungkook is not the result of a machine. He is the result of a movement. Back on social media, fans post side-by-side screenshots. One shows Jungkook performing barefoot at a modest high school festival a decade ago, grainy and nervous and breathtaking. The other shows him in slow motion at the MTV VMAs, drenched in spotlight, fire roaring behind him, body moving like silk. The caption reads, "Same boy, bigger stage, same heart." Millions of shares, millions of tears. The mythology builds, not out of fiction, but from pure, undeniable fact. He started small. He worked hard.
He never changed.
And now, he is rewriting the very future of music with every chart he conquers. Critics argue over semantics. Is he the biggest Asian artist in US history? The biggest Korean soloist? The first K-pop soloist to break X or Y barrier? But the truth doesn't live in category boxes. The truth lives in the magnitude of what has happened. For decades, the American music industry exported its culture and imported very little. Today, that equation has flipped. Jungkook didn't just import a sound, he exported a standard. He has forced the American mainstream to contend with a reality it can no longer ignore. Pop music is no longer Western by default. It is multilingual. It is borderless. And its center of gravity is shifting eastward, upward, global. In university classrooms, media studies professors are rewriting syllabi. Music business courses now include entire sections on K-pop marketing, army analytics, and Jungkook's campaign rollout strategy. Sociology majors are citing his career in theses about diaspora, identity, and cultural convergence. Marketing analysts point to his brand endorsements as case studies in soft power. And psychology departments are quietly publishing papers on fan devotion, community psychology, and parasocial resilience, all under one name, Jungkook. Somewhere in a small town in the Midwest, a boy who never felt represented here, standing next to you, on the radio for the first time. He doesn't understand every word, but he feels every beat. The vocals ripple through him, clean, aching, alive. It's not just a song. It's a signal. It tells him the world is wider than he thought, and that voices like his, like Jungkook's, like millions of others never heard, finally belong. And what about the future? It's hard to predict. That's the nature of seismic events. They change everything so suddenly that forecasts become obsolete. But what we do know is that this isn't an isolated phenomenon. It's the beginning of a wave. Jungkook's impact isn't just musical, it's spiritual, cultural, ideological. He represents a breaking open of the gate that others can now walk through. Labels are already signing more Asian talents than ever. Jungkook's name is whispered in casting rooms in Hollywood. Directors want him. Producers want him. Not for novelty, for presence, for craft, for magic. His influence now spans mediums. Fashion houses align their launches with his appearances. Designers race to send him unreleased collections. Art magazines ask, is he this generation's David Bowie in disguise? A pop star who isn't afraid of vulnerability, fluidity, minimalism, silence. And still, he gives no comment, no public reaction, no celebratory live stream. Just music and the stillness of military service, which makes the entire story feel faded, like a parable. A king disappears into duty, and the kingdom he left behind begins to worship his echo. The paradox is exquisite. His absence deepens his presence. His silence sharpens his sound. The story writes itself, line after line, as if he were always meant to do this. I am the halls of the National Museum of Korean Contemporary History. Curators are already discussing new exhibits. In a few years, there will likely be a section dedicated to this week, to June 2025. A timeline stretching from Jungkook's childhood audition tape through BTS's global conquest to this very moment, his solo apex. A glass case will hold his microphone. Behind it, a video loop of this week's charts. Spotify, Billboard, YouTube. The numbers will look surreal. But the date will be very real. June 20th, 2025, the day an artist, with no tweet, no post, no press release, entered the archives of music history and left the door open behind him. IT waits not with passive curiosity, but with a kind of reverent suspense, the way one might wait for the sun to rise in a place where light hasn't reached in centuries. Because when Jungkook speaks again, when he returns from the quiet rigor of national service, when the music resumes, when his voice touches the stage once more, it won't be a comeback. It will be an arrival, a coronation. A second act built on the foundation of something so rare, so tectonic, that even his silence now feels louder than most artists' entire careers. Every whisper from the industry affirms it. There are rumors swirling already that he has been secretly writing an all-English follow-up to Golden, that legendary producers in Sweden, Atlanta, and Tokyo have tracks waiting for his vocals, that fashion brands from Paris to Milan are clearing campaign budgets for 2026. He doesn't need to rush. Time, it seems, now bends to him. Meanwhile, ARMY remains mobilized, not as a fan base, but as a cultural engine. They do not just amplify. They archive. They educate. They protect. They flood platforms not just with adoration, but with strategy. In online spaces, fans craft open letters to Spotify, Apple, Billboard, holding them accountable for algorithmic fairness and chart transparency. They become watchdogs of a system that once ignored them. They become part of it, reshaping it in real time. Outside of fandom, academia begins to shift in earnest. Linguists analyze how Jungkook's bilingual phrasing has softened English's sonic dominance in global pop. Professors of international relations explore how BTS, and now Jungkook alone, functions as an extension of South Korea's soft power diplomacy. In business schools, case studies emerge with titles like The Jungkook Effect, Brand Loyalty in the Age of Global Fandom. In sociology departments, dissertations are titled Beyond Beatlemania, Global Unity in the Digital Age, with Jungkook as its centerpiece. Even governments take notice. Cultural departments in Southeast Asia, Latin America, the Middle East begin funding new programs for music development, citing K-pop and particularly Jungkook as proof that global appeal no longer hinges on Western proximity. They invest in studios. They build content accelerators. The idea is no longer to follow the American model, but to find the next Jungkook in their own cities. And still, in South Korea, his absence continues, noble, necessary, and deeply felt. The military posts no updates. His fellow soldiers offer no quotes. But the silence is sacred. A reminder that fame has never stripped Jungkook of his core: discipline, duty, dignity. It's a silence that humbles even the noisiest industry chatter. It reminds the world that before he was an icon, he was a person. A boy who trained endlessly, who watched his idols from afar, who wanted nothing more than to become a great singer. That he achieved something greater than greatness, something historic, is the result not of magic, but of relentless, almost monastic devotion. I am that light. Today's milestone becomes more than just a line in the record books. It becomes a lesson that music can still matter, that voices can still cross oceans, that artistry, when matched with integrity, still has the power to break borders without violence, to unite cultures without erasure, to make history without permission. And somewhere, maybe in New York, maybe in Tokyo, maybe in Nairobi, a 12-year-old hears yes or no for the first time. They don't understand the language. They don't know the artist's story. But something in the melody, the production, the vulnerability, it hits them. They press replay. And again. And again. That is the true power of today's moment. Not that Jungkook made it to the top, but that he left behind a signal strong enough to pull others up with him. A roadmap. A resonance. A revolution, disguised as a pop record. AS streaming numbers climb, and headlines multiply, and cultural critics run out of adjectives to describe what has happened. The world is left with a strange and beautiful truth. Music, in its purest form, remains the most powerful force of all.